Yeah, so let's welcome to the podcast today. We have writer and story editor Melinda Snodgrass from Star Trek The Next Generation. She wrote stories like The Measure of a Man, Pen Pals, Up the Long Ladder, The Ensigns of Command, and The High Ground. But before we tackle any of that, let's get to know Melinda. It'd be nice to learn your background.
I was a lawyer. I enjoyed the education a lot, and I couldn't have written Measure of a Man if I hadn't gone to law school. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm grateful for that, but I really kind of hated being a lawyer. And my best friend at the time was a writer, a novelist named Victor Milan. And Vic invited me to a big group autographing that he was taking part in. Roger Zelazny, I mean, a bunch of people were there. Susie McKee-Charnas, Fred Saberhagen. And afterwards, I got invited to this barbecue with all the writers. And they were the most interesting people I had ever met. And so after the party ended, I said to Vic, I want to be part of this world. So I started writing in secret, writing a novel. Vic and I would meet up. He would read my chapters, give me notes.
Oh,
And then I started selling. So I quit being in the law firm, which was great.
wow.
And I went ahead and became a writer. And then we have a very vibrant writers group here in New Mexico. A lot of famous science fiction writers were here. Two that I mentioned, Roger Zelazny, Fred Saberhagen. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
into our circle, Walter John Williams, and then into our circle came George R. R. Martin. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and George and I became and are very, very close friends. He was in our
That's
gaming
cool.
group. And then George got lured off to Hollywood
Yeah, yeah.
on the new Twilight Zone.
Mm.
And then later on Beauty and the Beast. And he
Oh,
called
okay.
and he said, "Hey, Snod, I think you'd be real good at this screenwriting thing. And if you want to try, if you want to write a spec script, I'll show it to my agent." Um,
Mm.
so I did, and that script was The Measure of a Man. And
Mm.
George had warned me that you never, ever, 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 ever sell your spec script because a spec script is just a calling card. It's just sort of an audition.
Mm.
Hmm.
And then George gave me a piece of probably the best writing advice I ever got. I, I, he told me I'd never sell it, and I had this idea for Measure. And I called
Mm.
George back and I said, "Hey, I've got this idea, and I think it's really great, but maybe I ought to write something else and save it for a pitch," because he was saying that your spec script gets you into pitch other ideas.
Sure, yeah.
And George said to me, "Never hoard your silver bullet," meaning always lead with the best thing you've got, the thing you have the most passion about, the thing you
Mm.
spend most.
Okay.
So I wrote Measure, and the upshot was that they not only bought the script, they ended up hiring me on the show.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so that was, and George still to this day, about nobody ever does that, but she did. So that was, and I've done a lot of weird stuff. I studied opera in Vienna.
Mm.
I
I
saw that, yeah.
yeah, I had my undergraduate degree was in history and music. Um, and so I think it was kind of like I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up until I discovered writing. And
Wow.
I love it. It's the most fun. It's never dull. There's always something new to learn. It's great. It's a wonderful career. So,
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it was very impressive to see the series of books that you've written, and I was reading some of the material. Like, sadly, I'm not a huge book reader, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate a book.
Mhm.
So it was really I was really happy to see that like you hadn't just done those couple episodes and a couple other TV things and then like haven't written anymore. So it was really nice to see.
no, I not only write my own novels, I'm working on a fantasy novel right now.
Okay.
First fantasy I've ever tried to write. Mostly I write science fiction, like doing
Mm.
this, and
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or my my occult thriller,
Mm.
Carolingian series. But I and George Martin and I created the longest running shared world anthology in the history with
Yeah.
Wild Cards. George and I co-created that together.
Oh.
Is it 22? Is that correct? Is it up to date?
36, 30, we're up to
36. Okay.
34 or 36 books now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
And we're trying to figure out where to go next with it. George and I are in discussions about,
I
you
love
know,
it.
oh,
Hmm.
it maybe it's had a great run, but we shall see. And we keep trying to get it set up in television, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a little hard. So right now, market's
Absolutely.
really tough.
I read too, like recently on your like a blog post that you said that like Star Wars was a big influential on you getting into writing too.
Oh, huge. I adore Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Um, yeah, I mean, people laugh at me, but basically, the thing that gave me the courage to walk in and quit that law firm was Empire Strikes Back.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Vic and I had this tradition of going to see Star Wars on opening day. That I'm old. Yeah, so
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and so we had done Star Wars together because we just knew there was this cool movie about spaceships and stuff. So
Sure.
we ended up ending up at a midnight feature because the theater didn't expect the crowds, and they kept they kept selling out, and they kept adding showings, and so we saw it. So we all go to see Empire, and we got to the scene where Yoda says to Luke, "Do or do not. There is no try."
Okay.
And I thought, I am miserable in this law firm. I hate my life.
Wow.
I'm going to try to do this other thing.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I literally walked in the next morning and typed out my letter of resignation and packed up my diplomas and my plants and laid it on my boss's desk, and I quit. I didn't
Wow.
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 even notice. I just walked out. And committed to writing, and it was the best decision I ever made. But
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
my dad was also a huge influence in my life, and he always taught me to take risks. So I took a risk.
Yeah.
It paid
Yeah.
off. Oh.
That's
And
really
if it hadn't worked, I still had the law degree. So
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that the parents always are happy that you have in the back pocket, right? If
exactly.
this thing doesn't pan out.
It's
uh,
pretty cool.
it is really
Yeah, I
cool.
don't think I've ever heard anybody quitting their job because of Yoda before. That's pretty good.
No, yeah. And I have had people mock me about, you listen to a green puppet, and I was like, it was very meaningful.
Yeah.
I think, I love Star Wars. So
Yeah.
Well, he knows what he's talking about. He's like 1,000 years old, He's been around.
exactly. Yeah. I tend to listen to my elders.
Yeah,
That's right. There you
that's
go.
really funny.
Nice. That's good. So you get hired from the spec script. So you send in Measure of a Man, they read it, they say this is really good, and then they bring you on while they were filming the episode or no?
Before,
Oh, before.
before they
Okay.
were filming the episode. No, what happened is, uh, they had me fly out to LA for some notes meetings,
Okay.
script, and we spent 3 hours. Maurice Hurley, my immediate boss, Rick Berman, that guy,
Mhm.
and anyway, and gave me some notes, and one of the major ones, I had a different teaser on
Okay.
Measure of a Man. The teaser I had written in the spec was Data learning how to swim, and that he's
Oh.
read books and he's watched all the videos, and then he goes and gets in a pool and he sinks like a stone, and then
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
walks across the bottom because he weighs 400 pounds. I had found that out from
Yeah.
looking up stuff, and he's puzzled because I did all the. How could I not have done it? And Maury said to me, "Well, we can't do that because we suck at going on location as
Wow.
Okay.
we're terrible at it." Which was really weird because when I went on Reasonable Doubts, we went on location constantly. And he said
Yeah.
the other problem is that Brent's makeup would wash off.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with something different, and I came up with a poker game. And it was, my response to the notes that made Maury go, at the end of the meeting, Rick left the room and Maury
Mhm.
said, this was on a Thursday afternoon, and Maury said, I'm hiring you and you start on Monday.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I had to fly home, find somebody to come stay in my house, pack up my car, drive back to LA.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
That's
also then arrange for my horse to come and join me.
Oh man.
wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that was how I broke into Hollywood, and
Mm,
I'll be honest.
Wow.
I'm grateful to Trek because it launched my Hollywood career, and I
Sure.
grew up, on original Trek as a little kid.
hmm
But it was a very unusual, strange show, very difficult
Hmm.
working conditions, and I kind of wish I'd had an experience like on Reasonable Doubts before
Hmm.
I went to Trek, because
Okay.
Reasonable Doubts was a much more normal
Interesting.
situation. Like we could go to the set and we watched dailies and we were in
Hmm.
casting. We did all the things you normally get to do as a writer that we were
Yeah.
not permitted to do on Trek. And I think it suffered as a result,
Hmm.
that we were not as closely involved in the entire process. So
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Is that like a production thing or?
it was partly it was Rick Berman.
Mm,
Mm,
Rick Rick wasn't really he was a studio executive who
okay.
was brought in to kind of oversee Trek because it was kind of a hot mess that first season. But
hmm
he wasn't,
hmm
he didn't come from a producing background. Um,
Okay.
and so I think he
mm,
was grasping for control. And so
Mm,
he had to be in charge of everything, and we were just iced out of it.
wow.
And there's a reason why you want your writing staff to watch dailies while they're eating lunch. Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
because like I remember one time we were watching dailies on Reasonable Doubts, and one of us, I can't even remember whether me or somebody else, had written a line of dialogue for Mark,
Mm,
and it
Mm.
was clear and we were like, never write that kind of dialogue for Mark again. And we knew that because we'd seen the dailies. I mean,
mm,
and if you don't get to see that and you're cut out of it, it kind of limits how well you write, because it
Yeah.
is a
hmm
collaboration between you, the actors, the
Hmm.
directors, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a weird dynamic on that show,
Mm,
versus how television normally is. So
Yeah. It kind of reads that way sometimes on the screen too, that it kind of seems like the writer had like obvious intent with the episode, and then somewhere somebody decided to change something, and it's like it doesn't lend to the story. Like it adds something that clearly feels like another person was doing
yeah.
something. It doesn't feel like it feels like two separate thoughts sometimes, like in an episode. And we
Yeah, no,
were,
I mean, it was hard because we weren't, and oftentimes, on Reasonable Doubts, I'd go over and somebody would say, I'm having trouble with this line. I would rewrite
yeah,
it on the spot,
wow,
and
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it would help. And so I think you need that. And yes, I mean, I always tell people when I teach, I do a lot of like guest lectures at high schools, universities, and so on. And
yeah,
you are going to have a lot of people mess with your work. I mean,
okay,
everybody's got an
hmm
input, the studio, the network,
Yeah.
all these
yeah,
people um, have their input on what it is you're going to write. And if you can't stand that, then you need to be a novelist, because
Yeah.
you're
Right.
going to have to work. I mean, and actors, at times I will bend to what an actor wants. Other times, you
hmm
have to tell them no. You have to say this line is written because it's important, and,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
because also they don't tend to read, a lot of actors don't read the whole script. They just read the daily sides of the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they
which
don't
makes
actually know what the sweep of the story, the arc of the story.
hmm
So, you kind of have to go, no, no, no. There's a reason why you're doing this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me
There's a
here.
point. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
That makes sense
But
because sometimes like you can write something and then it's up to the actor to to give that emotion, but if they don't really understand like where it's coming from, then it doesn't come across. Yeah.
Right. And if you can
Yeah.
communication with them,
Yeah.
and I mean the one thing I love working with actors is I love to write dialogue. My
Hmm.
books tend to be very
Yes.
dialogue heavy, not a lot of waving fields of grain and description, that bores me.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
I, what I loved working with good actors is oftentimes I could just let them show the show the point of the scene with a look, and I never had to
Hmm.
write dialogue. Because
Mm.
if you
Mm.
have a really good actor, they can save you writing a page of dialogue because they can do it with just their
Mm.
expression. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Hiddleston is brilliant at that.
Mm.
If
Oh yeah.
you
Sure.
know, watch
Yeah.
him in Loki in the
Yeah,
TV,
he's
he can do more with a look than a lot of actors can do with a soliloquy. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, that's one of the great fun things of writing in collaboration with actors. So and
Hmm.
I love that, and always eager to do it again. But
Hmm.
Yeah, you bring up like an excellent point because when Caleb and I watched The Measure of a Man and the brunt, like the full part of the courtroom scene, and then pen pals where they're in, I think it's Picard's quarters, and they're all
Hmm.
discussing what to do with the frequency that Data has found. I said to Caleb during the thing, not knowing, but I said to Caleb during our review of it that like this feels like this is what Melinda wrote because the dialogue in here is like
Hmm.
probably the best we've seen in Star Trek thus far. Like
Yeah.
it's very clear that
Yeah.
you knew how to have people actually talk to one another. And
Feels like real people talking to each other. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the challenges, and you try to work to the strengths of the people you're working with, the things they do well. I mean, to me, the most interesting thing you can do in drama is put two people together and let them hash something out.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, even last night in our gaming group, I played a role playing game on Zoom with friends,
Cool.
and uh,
Awesome.
yeah, and I'm going to incorporate this moment somewhere in a book because this character and I, he's really down on his family. And I was trying to point out, but you have a family. I mean, it was a really intense moment of role playing,
That's
Wow, yeah.
awesome.
and
That's
and
great.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put that in a book.
That's
You
great.
know?
What's the theme of the game you guys play?
It's a great game. A friend of mine, young man, has written it. It's going to be published
Oh,
next year. It's
awesome.
not out yet, but it's called Mythos, and
Okay.
Okay.
uh, new title. It had a different, but you're playing gods, both ancient gods and modern,
Oh, okay.
in the present day. It's like,
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
so
That's cool.
how do you make a living when you're
wow.
no longer have worshipers, but you're still like
Yeah.
around. I'm
Wow.
playing Loki.
Nice.
Blast. Um, and yeah, I mean, like one of our friends who's another author is playing an Irish god of love and war, which I find intriguing. And he owns a flower shop. He
That's awesome.
has to make a buck.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I know it's a great game,
That's
and
cool.
I can't wait for it to come out next year. And
Yeah.
yeah, right now the creator is writing some expansion packs for
Hmm.
it. So
Hmm.
when
That's
it
cool.
comes out, there'll be able to be expansion packs pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
That's
I'm
really cool.
writing a tie-in novel for them, so they'll have
That's
material
awesome.
that would go with it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm writing a Loki novel, but
Cool.
That's cool.
traditional Loki, not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the actual mythic
The
Loki.
one from like Norse mythology, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's actually Odin's blood brother and not Thor's brother.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. I like
So,
that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
that's really cool.
Mythos is a great title for it too. I like that.
yeah,
Hmm.
we were all going around trying to help him come up with a different
Yeah,
title
that's good.
and be the best. So yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's fun. Yeah, we do like a Star Trek RPG online. Like so we kind of understand the whole like once
Hmm.
when you're role playing good, it helps
Yeah.
the material grow better. So yeah.
I miss our role playing group though. Everybody got really busy and because
Hmm.
George, Walter John Williams,
Mm.
Daniel I mean, it was amazing. We even had Roger Zelazny playing in some of our
Wow.
games before Roger
Wow.
That's crazy.
passed away. Yeah, Roger was an amazing gamer. Uh,
Wow.
but I miss having everybody in the same room and we're eating salsa
Hmm.
cookies and
Yeah, yeah.
having
Yeah,
a
yeah.
blast. So
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
There is something about being together doing it. Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely the best. So
Yeah.
I miss it.
yeah. We live up in central New York, and so we get a lot of snow. So there's a lot of getting on Zoom and playing the game. So we totally understand.
Yeah, yeah.
So neither one of us are really familiar with it. What is really a teleplay? Like what does that really mean?
Well, it's the script that they're going to work off of. It's a standard television script. If it's for like NBC or CBS where there's commercials, it's going to run about 47 minutes. So
Mm.
that's generally about 52 to 55 pages. Um,
Okay.
Mm.
if
Wow.
you're writing a feature film, that's generally around 100 pages.
Mm.
Sometimes it can push to 120. If you're a new young writer, you want to try to hold your feature film to 100 pages.
Mm.
Um, and it's a whole process, and I miss it. I love it. When you're in a writer's room and
Hmm.
you're on staff on a show, and I've gone from being a story editor on Star Trek to being an executive producer on
Mm.
Wildcards for Hulu.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you're sitting there with a lot of other talented writers and you're brainstorming these episodes. So you're bouncing ideas, and we do what we call it's called breaking a story.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's what we do in Hollywood. It works for novels as well. You can use it for your prose. I'm an outliner. I outline everything before if I don't know the end, I don't start the project
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
because I need to know where I'm going so I know how to get there. And in Hollywood, it's essential, especially if you're working in television,
Mm.
because the pace is so fast, like especially for network television, where you've got 22 episodes on the air. It's like laying track for a train that's 300 feet behind you.
I
Mhm.
yeah.
So generally what happens is somebody comes in and says, hey, I have this idea for a Troy story, say, and you
Mhm.
fill out the basic, one line idea, and people go, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let's see where it goes. So then what we do is either using a whiteboard or sometimes a cork board and 3x5 cards, you start by putting in what the end of the show is, the climax of it.
Oh,
Mm.
okay.
And then I normally go and figure out the teaser, what makes you want to watch or read that book or watch that show.
Okay.
Mhm.
Then you fill in, and then you sort of in your head break it down into acts. Now in network television, you have actual act breaks because there's going to be a commercial. With
Mhm.
streaming, they don't have those commercials, so you don't, but you still have to think in terms of acts. Where's the action? What does the first act do? What does the second act do? So
Yeah.
we lay in the end of act one, the end of act two, the end of act three, and then the climax of the thing. And then we plot backwards. Because if you know where you need to get to, you figure out what steps have to be there to get
Yeah,
to
it
it.
makes
Mhm.
So, and as you're chatting, and what this does is it saves you going off on directions that won't work. Because you figure it out in the outline phase. You go, oh,
Mm.
this would be cool. Oh, wait, no, that won't work. And you figure it out. Then you roll back, but you haven't written, half the script, or you haven't written 100 pages of your novel only to find out, ooh, that was a mistake.
Mm.
So once we have broken the story, then you write up an outline of it, and it's sent to the network, to the studio, to
Mm.
your bosses, obviously, and
yeah.
everybody weighs in and gives you notes, and then you revise the outline, and then if they're happy, they tell you go to script, and then you
Mm.
go and write your script, and you
Oh,
have 2 weeks. If it's television
Oh.
drama, I don't write 30-minute comedy. I don't do that.
Mhm.
If it's a drama, you've got 2 weeks to go away and write your script. Uh,
Wow.
and then, you come back and people give you notes and you do a rewrite, and then eventually it goes into production, and there you go.
Wow.
It's an intense process, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have that 2 weeks where you get to go off, and you don't even have to be in your office if you don't want to be. Oftentimes I would tell my staff, yeah, go away, write your script, go wherever you're comfortable and feel like you can get the best done.
Hmm.
When I was on Profiler, one of my writers had a friend do a house on an island off the coast of Nantucket or somewhere.
Okay.
Mhm.
Would literally fly back east to where his family was, and he would write on this island, and then he came
Hmm.
back to LA in 2 weeks
Wow.
with a
Wow.
That's
finished
cool.
script. He's a great writer too.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, you have that sort of space to be in your own head, which is, sometimes if we're in the executive producer position, you can't exactly leave because there's always a question coming up.
Yeah.
So it's a different
Hmm.
game.
Wow. 2 weeks. Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
So
but it's
what do you,
55 pages,
yeah, yeah. What do you prefer more? Because so Star Trek back then used to be like episodic and you could kind of write per episode. Do you enjoy that or do you enjoy writing more like a linear, like episode to episode?
I prefer what we've got with streaming,
Okay.
where you can do an arc. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at Andor, for example, which I
Hmm.
just stunningly
It's
brilliant.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um,
good.
if you, if you have the luxury of not having to do, I mean, and part of the reason episodic television was the way it was is because local networks in
Hmm.
different states, they didn't want to have to put it up the episodes in set order.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
yes.
They wanted to be able to just throw anything up in any order.
Yeah.
And with an old fashioned show, you could do that because
Mm.
there was no link.
Right.
I think you get better storytelling if
Hmm.
you have an overarching arc. Um, the
Tremendous.
only and the only downside is that you end up with these very short seasons. I mean, I just don't think 6 or 8 episodes is quite enough
Mm.
to fully tell a story well.
Yeah, yeah. Agreed.
Seems like it sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like 12
That
is,
kind of,
yeah,
Yeah.
it falls in a really sweet spot. And then,
yeah.
you can tell. And I mean, I use Andor a lot to teach with because
Hmm.
I mean, it's so beautiful. They introduced these two young men, Cyril and Cassian.
Hmm.
They're in completely different places. And
Yeah.
over the course, they change places.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Because Cassian is in ne'er-do-well, has no idea what he wants to do with his life. He's just drifting.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
guy thinks he's in control. He thinks he's got it all planned out. And then his life falls apart and Cassian finds a purpose.
Purpose. Yeah.
That was what's so
Mhm.
beautiful about it. I mean, people kept about how slow Andor was. And
Yeah.
I was like, no, no, no. It was
Mm-mm.
it was such deep storytelling.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That heist episode is so good too. I mean,
oh
it's so planned out and so paced so well.
no. And the
Yeah,
things
it's
that
good.
go wrong and the things that you don't expect. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was heartfelt. I mean, I was
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
breathless at points in it. And then in the second season, he did the same thing. He shows how most rebellions are just a hot mess
Hmm.
at the beginning,
Yeah. Yes.
and then slowly they grow to become an effective force. And then you end up with Mon Mothma, a powerful
Yeah.
figure to lead it. But in the
Yeah.
beginning, you got a bunch of clowns doing rock, paper,
Yeah.
scissors,
Yeah.
each other. And
Yeah.
that was just great. So yeah, and so I love that. I mean, that's the problem with Trek. I mean, at one point I did something in a script where I referenced an earlier episode. My bosses were like, wow, look at that. She referenced, and I was like, well, yeah, because people don't, they don't have
Yeah.
amnesia. It's not like they
Yeah.
forgot this
That's
other thing happened.
that's how life works. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a different thing. I mean,
Hmm.
as Ira Bear, a wonderful, wonderful writer and
Mm-hmm.
real mentor when I first broke into the business. And I know he did brilliant things with Deep Space Nine, which I have not watched. So, but
Hmm.
Ira said to me once, Melinda, don't take this so hard. Remember, we're just the filler between the important part, which is selling toilet paper. and, uh, and so and that's the difference between network television
Hmm.
and if you're writing a feature or if you're writing, the new model of streamers, with set arcs. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you mentioned bringing stuff back from a previous episode. I really appreciate in Measure of Man when you reference Yar, her funeral.
right.
And it was like, yeah, why? It's like so she dies and then like nobody talks about it after. It's like, yeah, but that was like an important thing that affects the crew, you know? So
Yeah.
for Data to hold on to it, like that's humanity. Like he's showing humanity. Like yeah, I was really happy with that. That was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's death should have consequence. I mean, it should have
Hmm.
been, or what's the point, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but also too, like the whole point was like that was like the hook to like understand that
Hmm.
like he is sentient, like that he is a
Yeah,
person. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not just a machine.
yeah. He's a toaster,
Yeah.
active toaster. But I mean, it was a perfect setup for me to, and looking at what the Supreme Court just did today.
Hmm.
Oh,
Um, I mean, basically, the Measure of a Man is based off of the infamous Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott versus Sanford,
Hmm.
in which um, a black man, a slave, was brought by his master into a free territory. At
mm,
which point he said, I'm in a free territory, I'm a free man now. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's when the Taney court ruled that he was not, in fact, a person, he was property, and he had to be returned to his master. Terrible blight on American legal history. Although
Hmm.
this court's running close to trying to be there.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and um, and so I looked at that and thought, I can make this apply to data. I think this could
Hmm.
be very
Interesting.
interesting. And it also, the other thing it did is it enabled me to have some conflict between the crew. Picard and
Hmm.
Riker sat in opposition to each other. And I
Hmm.
owe thanks to a friend of mine at the time who was a retired Navy pilot
Oh,
who
Hmm.
had asked what I was working on. I told him I was writing a script and told him the premise. And he said, in the Navy, when we're at sea and we can't get to a judge advocate general,
Oh.
the captain always defends and the first officer always
Hmm.
prosecutes if a crime or
wow.
something occurs on the ship. And I went, that's perfect. That was the
Yeah.
last little piece I needed in order to make that script sing, because Gene, God help us, Gene had told us in a meeting, um, my people are perfect. They have no
Yeah.
flaws.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
So yeah. So why is there a show?
yeah, I mean, and it's like, then I don't know how to write about perfect people. And so we kept having
Yeah.
to generate conflict outside of the crew. It
Yes.
Hmm.
always had to
Yeah.
be something outside. And that was less interesting. I mean,
Right.
the old show had some heart, because we
Hmm.
the debates between Spock and McCoy and
Yeah.
all these.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was something I think that was missing from Next Generation.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and actually one more sort of small interesting point.
Mhm.
Guinan wasn't in my original spec script.
Hmm.
I didn't have a scene for her. And
Wow.
this is how the business of Hollywood and creativity sort of clash, and yet something wonderful can happen.
Yeah.
So I've been hired on the show. I've started work. We're getting, my episode is in pre-production. And Maury calls me into the office and he says, we were looking over Whoopi's contract
Hmm.
and she's guaranteed to be in however many, like 14 episodes or whatever.
Oh well.
And if we don't put her in Measure of a Man, we're going
Hmm.
to be in violation of her contract.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
oh, oh.
So I need you to write a Guinan scene. And he said, and you've got 3 hours.
Oh man.
Oh.
got a production meeting. So I went up to my little tiny office on the third floor of the building, and I walked in circles for about an hour and came up with this idea. And I went back downstairs and said to Maury, I think what do you think? And this is that brainstorming with us. So I told him the basic idea, and he and I kicked it around and, finessed it a little bit. And he said, "You got it, go write it." So I went upstairs and I wrote the 10 forward scene between Picard and Guinan.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Fantastic scene.
And
yeah, it is. Yeah.
And their performance, to me, it's the heart of the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Which then, of course, they completely ignored in the first season of Picard because they built a whole bunch of disposable people. So I don't know what that's about. And I have a confession. That is the only Trek I've watched since I left the show. It was It was a it was a difficult show.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's too happy with it. So
no. Did you end up watching season 3 or no?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I can't. I have as my friend Rick Manning, who I worked with on Trek, said, Star Trek put the S and the T in PTSD.
Yes.
So, and for those of us who were on the show, I have a version, so I can't.
Well, I can understand because I can understand why you would watch that season because they obviously bring out that they're going to bring Bruce Maddox back. So I get what, but
well, I didn't even know it was happening.
Oh, you didn't know? Okay.
A bunch of fans. The show was airing, and a bunch of my followers were texting me and sending messages and going, "Did you realize this is based entirely on Measure of a Man?" And I, so I went and watched it, and
Caleb hasn't seen it. We're probably not going to cover it because honestly, it really destroys like the fundamentals of what Next Generation was and those characters. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and the lawyer in me kept having it. I did watch that first season, and the lawyer self was like, "This is Picard. She murdered this guy," and everybody just kind of goes, "Well, that's okay."
It's fine. Yeah.
What? Even if she was acquitted because she was, emotionally, whatever, at least make her stand trial. What?
At least have some consequence. I know.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Consequences, please. And the Romulan elf was like, I don't know what that was about.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
I really appreciate you telling us that story about the was it the Navy where the captain in the first because that was a part of the episode where we were like, well, that's kind of like, couldn't they just wait for somebody else to come to the star base and do it? But I appreciate you telling us that because that makes a lot of sense and it really helps like ground that more for me. I like that detail.
And there's a phrase we use in Hollywood called hanging a lantern on it, which is to draw attention to it. I have Philippa say, this is a new base. I don't have the necessary, infrastructure in order to handle this. There's no JAG officers here.
Yeah.
So that was, then I could, but it was great because I got to have conflict with it. Riker wants to win.
It's really good. That's really good. Yeah, that scene where Riker is looking through the data, he's looking at data on the screen and he gets that like look on his face and he's like, oh man, I just won the case. But then it's like, oh, but I don't win the case. It's so good. I mean, the writing and his acting in that scene is great.
Jonathan, fantastic.
He's great.
So, he was great. So there is an extended version. Actually, this on the Blu-ray that it was supposed to be Picard and Riker fencing, but they didn't have time to fight choreography and have Jonathan. I mean, Patrick knew how because Shakespeare sword fights across the stage all the time, but they didn't have time to actually do the fight choreography, which was a shame because my intention was that it was the two men fencing.
Yeah.
And Riker saying, "I'm gonna beat you." I'm gonna. Because I think there would be. I mean, that was actually one of the things that I understand why the actor wanted to stay on the show for 7 years. But there isn't an officer in the Navy who wouldn't immediately jump to have their own command, you know.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
The idea that he kept turning away, promotion so he could stay with Picard was like,
Yeah. It makes him a bad officer to keep turning down promotions, but
exactly. I
but
was
you
like,
don't want him to leave. We don't want him to leave either.
yeah, you're sort of torn
That's
because
funny.
you're like, no, I don't,
Yeah,
but find a
that's
better
funny.
argument, I guess.
And Riker doesn't fence either. He does jujitsu. So
I will.
So there was a thing that we kept reading about. I don't know, you may or may not know and have information about it, but Caleb and I were wondering when we were reading like trivia things in the past that Gene Roddenberry's lawyer like rewrote episodes or wrote
or
episodes or
added
something.
added stuff. Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
That was, he had been frog marched off the lot before I was hired.
Okay.
I
Okay.
heard stories that
Man.
he was a very poisonous presence in
Huh.
there, but I never met him and
Okay.
Okay.
never around him. I do know that I mean I'm friends with David Gerald, who wrote The Trouble with Tribbles, and I know
Hmm.
a little bit of what went on because David was on the show in that first season along
Sure.
with Dorothy Fontana.
Hmm.
And both
Right.
Dorothy and David walked, they were just like,
Hmm.
there were so many problems on that first season.
Wow.
I wasn't hired until
Mm.
after the writer's strike.
Okay. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was,
Okay.
I mean, I had written my script, I had given it to George, who had given it to his agent, and then
Mm.
there was a writer's strike that went on for 6 months. And so I
Oh.
just forgot about it, went back to writing
Yeah.
and riding my horses. And then I got this call saying,
Hmm.
I want to talk to you when they came back because they didn't have any material, they didn't have any scripts. And Maury found my deck, and
Yeah.
that was how it all started. But
Yeah,
no,
that's
it was
crazy.
before my time, and
Okay.
there were a lot of. I mean, obviously, I think that show over 7 years went through like 48 writers or some
Wow.
ungodly.
I
That
yeah.
is very unusual. In that,
Hmm.
not. I mean, Gunsmoke had like the same 3 writers for 15 years or something. I mean, you don't
Right.
normally churn through people
Yeah.
No.
at that
No.
rate. Um,
Huh.
Yeah. Funny
That's funny.
enough, we literally saw David Gerald yesterday and
Hmm.
Mike and Denise Akuda. We were up at they have like a tour in Ticonderoga, New York, where they have rebuilt the TOS
right.
like filming set. And yeah, we were didn't get to talk to him, but he
Oh,
literally
Mike and Denise are lovely, and
Hmm.
David and I have known each other for a number of years, obviously.
yeah,
That's cool.
really funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Did you have Picard enjoy riding horses because you do, or is that a Patrick Stewart thing?
What I did is, well, partly it's me. I mean, I love horses, but and have them. But I would take an actor to lunch at the
Mm.
Paramount restaurant, the fancy one,
Mm.
you know,
Hmm.
people where most of us ate. And I would just ask them, like, what are your hobbies? What do you know how to do that's different and weird? I mean, like
Hmm.
Jonathan
Sure.
told me he played the trombone, he played,
Mm.
and and so I thought, okay, we're going to incorporate that. And talking with Patrick, I mean, I knew he fenced, but it
Hmm.
turned out he rode as well. And so I was able, and it was really fun because they brought the Wrangler. All the horses are Teamsters, by all the animals in Hollywood are
Okay.
Teamsters.
Okay.
They're all fall under the auspice of the Teamsters Union.
Yeah.
And so they brought 2 horses. They actually brought the truck and trailer and the horses onto the Paramount lot. And my boss was like, I don't know from horses. Go out and tell them pick one. So they had 2 horses. They had that white Arabian and they had this
Mhm.
chestnut. And I looked him over and petted him and talked to the handler, and we picked the white horse. So
Yeah,
Wow.
that was one of the few times we actually went on location.
that's cool. Yeah, that was a beautiful horse too.
Yeah. But yeah, I found out that Patrick could ride. I mean, I was trying to just trying something that would humanize these people. I mean, because
Hmm.
what I really, really missed from original Trek, uh,
Mm.
I love those scenes in the original show where Uhura would be singing and
Hmm.
Spock would be playing the Vulcan harp, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, there was this sense of, you know, there are these people in a tin can in the vastness and dangers of space.
yeah.
It seems to me they would bond together,
Hmm.
Yes.
find and to me, Tin Forward, as beautiful as the set was,
Hmm.
it felt it felt cold. It felt off,
Hmm.
it didn't feel I never felt like these people were bonding with each other.
No, no, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and
I can
I
sense that.
hated the holodeck. I hated it.
Yeah. Huh.
Um, I made the mistake of saying in a meeting that Jean was at, that couldn't they discover the holodeck caused cancer and they have to be ripped out of all the show.
Oh no.
I mean, that was, but yeah, I thought it made for lazy storytelling. And
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I don't understand why people who are exploring the wonders of the universe would want to go play with themselves on the holodeck. And and honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
you know what the holodeck was going to get used for. It's like the
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And God love the Orville for
Oh yeah.
actually
Yes.
going
Yes.
there
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
acknowledging. I mean, and they had. I'm going to talk about the Orville because I thought it was a terrific show, but there were some stupid jokes that didn't land, but I liked the show a lot.
Yeah.
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 They used the holodeck to help deal with trauma in one
Mm.
episode, which I thought was
Yep.
stunning.
Hmm. Yep.
And then they use the other one where it becomes, addiction to porn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this is great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it is funny. It's supposed to be one of these things where it's like, well, they don't always have time for shore leave, and this is kind of where they go to relax. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like you said, it is lazy sometimes where, well, we would like the crew to do this, but like they're not going to go to the planet surface, so just put them in the holodeck, you know?
yeah, and let them pretend to be, detectives
Yeah.
or, what, and
Yeah.
again, I just didn't, I just never liked it. I mean, I
Hmm.
wanted the stories to be more, and I wanted the people to interact more, with each other instead of,
Yeah.
yeah, I just thought and also, I mean, the stupid thing kept taking over the ship periodically. That was, you would take it out. It kept taking over the ship.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, we've made the joke too that like once it's like, well, if these safety parameters don't work, people can die in there. It's like maybe we don't go in that thing
Yeah.
ever.
maybe
Yeah, let's
don't
not
like
use it. Yeah. I'm not using it anymore. Yeah.
George. George Martin and I had we had our own version of how we wanted the series to end. So bad. I shouldn't tell this story, but
Yeah.
so George and I were at dinner and we were chatting about what they should do to tie up the end of Next Generation.
Sure.
And what we came up with was that it's Picard on the bridge, everything's on fire, half the crew is dead around him. He's being dramatic as only Patrick could be dramatic against the enemy that's destroying the Enterprise. And then there is a hail on the intercom that says,
Okay.
Lieutenant Picard, report to the bridge. And he shuts it's the holodeck, shuts down, and he walks out into the
Oh,
corridor as James Kirk is walking past and
Oh my God, that's
says,
awesome.
oh,
"You spend a lot of time in there, Lieutenant."
Oh my God, that's so
wow.
good.
Almost
That's
like
really good.
That was the end of the show.
Isn't that
Needless to
how
say, they would have killed us, but that was George's and my.
isn't that how they ended Dallas? That show wasn't that like a dream?
Oh, that was one
Newhart.
season, I guess. Yeah, they had one season where it was all a dream, where Jake.
That's so funny.
I,
Yeah,
I
That's a great idea. Yeah.
I was thinking that's the Newhart show, right? That's how.
Bob Newhart,
yeah. He
yeah.
wakes up and looks over, and he has a different wife or something.
Yeah, yeah. Like I forget like the whole basically I think the finale is like he like you said he looks over and
Yeah.
it's his wife from like the first
The
series.
other show, the other series, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, what?
Yeah.
But that's really funny. That's really funny. He's been in the holodeck playing captain for just
On
months.
and off. That's what all this was. And Kirk is still in command.
Oh,
Yeah, and we were going to have Bill
yeah.
Shatner. You know,
It would have been a lot funnier if like Wesley was the captain of
the other
the
ship. Yeah.
Oh man, that's that's really good. Actually, I really like that. I don't
I
know.
like that a lot. Yeah.
Well, it was George and I being brats, but we were
Sure,
having
sure.
fun
But
with
that's
it.
fun.
So.
Oh man, that's good.
So we're gonna soon, I think in a couple weeks, we're gonna watch Up the Long Ladder, and then obviously we'll get into the season 3 episodes that you wrote. What is something that you like or dislike about the writing of Up the Long Ladder? Like without spoiling too much, like what's something
Hmm.
I think it was an example of, what happens when between the slip between the cup. What I wanted to do was write a show about that immigration is good.
Hmm.
okay.
Immigration makes a society um, healthier, and more vibrant, and brings new ideas, and that societies that don't welcome new people, new ideas, new
Hmm.
thoughts, will ultimately stultify. Unfortunately, it got treated much more as a comedy, and that was
Hmm.
not what I intended. But I was a story editor; I didn't have a lot to say, and
Hmm.
and that was that.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest issue is I liked writing about Data,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
why I wrote the 3 episodes I did that focused so much on him,
Yep.
Yeah.
because he was, when you're told that the characters are perfect, he was the only character that had growth potential,
Mm.
Hmm.
could change. None of the other characters could change. And
Yeah.
change is
Yeah.
the essence of, telling a good
Oh
story.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, that's why I tended, like, I really wanted to write one more Data episode. I really wanted to write an episode where he has to plan and commit a murder for a
Hmm.
reason. And there's a reason why
Hmm.
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
to, but he had to, and I never got to write that episode, but
Hmm.
I did get to do,
Wow.
you know,
Fascinating.
Member Man, Pen Pals, and Instance of Command, which is where
Hmm.
I wanted Data to have to learn that command is an ephemeral thing.
Hmm.
It has to do a lot with charisma. And
Hmm.
and by the way, that is the only time I've ever been rewritten.
Hmm.
On my scripts, there was a whole blow up over Instance of Command.
Oh man.
And
Oh really?
so,
No.
yeah, so for just we had a new boss. So anyway, the script ended up
Sure.
getting, it's still a lot of it is mine, but if people want to see my version of that script,
Hmm.
it's on my website under
Hmm.
writings.
Oh
Hmm.
great. Oh great. Okay.
Read my original draft of Instance of Command,
Hmm.
which is somewhat different. Part of the reason is because Jean wanted Data to get laid again.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
I
Yep.
had
Okay.
to figure out a way for Data to get laid. And it's
Yeah.
all very logical. It's a logical analysis
Hmm.
of a computer. But anyway, that's my script. You can go read it,
Uh,
and see what I did with it. Um, there was this perception, everybody was on, my boss at the time was a man named Michael Wagner, who's the forgotten man of Star Trek. He was only there for about 8 weeks. He
wow.
Oh
became so disgusted with the leaders of the bosses that he quit.
Hmm.
Um,
yeah.
and honestly, I think if he had told me he was quitting, I would have quit with him and not been
Wow.
for the 3rd season. But by the time I found out he quit, it was kind of
Hmm.
Yeah. You were
sort of,
in.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, and he quit because of what was done to my script, and
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
he was just livid over it, and he described it as working in a shark pit, and then he quit the show. Um,
Jeez.
so yeah, and sadly, he was a brilliant writer. He
Hmm.
sadly passed away from brain tumor in his 40s.
Oh man.
Oh
Really
wow.
Wow.
tragic. He was a lovely, lovely man.
Hmm.
But anyway, you can go look at how I got a
Yeah.
robot to go to bed
Hmm.
with someone, and see that it's on my
Oh.
website.
No,
So
that's great. Yeah,
Oh
we'll
boy.
definitely be checking it out when we get there. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's amazing. I love that. Because there's been so many times where you read something and you are just like this like you're reading something about like that people have notated on the internet, so you don't really know, and you're reading it and
Hmm.
you just it just sounds like the writer room was not an encouraging place.
Yeah.
And
Ira Bear, God love him, buffered us as much as he could.
Hmm.
a lot of the toxicity on that show, but I was the only woman on that show above the line, and it was not a good work environment, let me put it there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Um,
yeah.
and Ricky and Hans and Ron Moore, whose script I found in the slush pile and brought to the attention of everybody. I got Ron
Hmm.
on track
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
I found this brilliant script by this young writer. Because I would dip into the scripts that came in, God help us,
Oh yeah.
and were terrible, but Star Trek was the only show that had open submission for scripts,
Yeah.
and which is never good because studios can steal things. So,
Hmm.
that's why you want stuff to come in agented because the
Yeah.
writer's being protected. But yeah, Ira was very protective of us. He was a great boss, great leader of the our higher ups were less so. But Ira,
Hmm.
Ricky, Hans, Ron, we're all lovely to work with. We had a great time. So
Hmm.
yeah.
So before my wife wanted me to ask you some questions, but before I get there, I just wanted to ask you, was the thing I've heard the actors talk about specifically filming like this block of like 80s to 2000s filming of Star Trek that they had to be dead letter perfect. Was that like a writer's room thing or was that just like a production thing?
I think it was a production. I mean, I would because we were not permitted to be involved in any of that side of it.
Okay.
I really don't know. I mean, we were just locked up in our little rooms. I mean, reasonable doubts. If you got bored sitting at your computer, you should walk across the Warner Brothers lot and go to the set, and hang
Hmm.
out
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
while, and then go back,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
Makes
so
sense.
I can't really comment because we didn't have a lot of contact with the actors, which
Okay.
is a shame, because we didn't
Yeah.
have input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. I forgot. Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Hmm.
So my wife, she's a big, like a very big fan of The Measure of a Man. She came onto our podcast to watch it with us. So she last night was like,
Hmm.
ask her these questions. I said, okay.
Okay.
So she says, the first question is, as a woman working in science fiction television, what kind of challenges did you face that your male colleagues didn't?
Hmm.
Um, Getting talked over,
Hmm.
um, getting yelled at for pointing out logical inconsistencies. Being harassed, that was
Yeah.
always fun. Uh,
Hmm.
Getting called to meetings at 9 o'clock at night when everybody else had gone home. Yeah, it was
Hmm.
unpleasant.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was the late 80s and we didn't have a lot of recourse. If I'd said anything, I might have gotten a settlement from Paramount, but I would have been fired. So I
Sure.
kept my
Yeah.
mouth shut.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll never forget one time. This was the other thing. We would have people come in and pitch ideas, and I always took the notes, partly because I'd been a role playing gamer and you take notes, you keep
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was taking notes, and we had this elderly gentleman come in to pitch a story idea. And, his pitch was that the Enterprise meets an alien ship with a weapon they have never faced before, and they don't know how to deal with it, and they're being destroyed, and it's sound waves.
Hmm.
And we were, all sitting there and, not nobody, you don't say anything, the poor guy.
Hmm.
So he left, and my boss, Michael Pillar, says, I think that's a really interesting idea. And
Hmm.
I literally like threw my notebook and pen in the air and I went, remember that poster, from Aliens in Space? No one can hear you scream.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
say, we can't, there are no sound waves. And Michael yelled at me and said, why do you have to be so difficult all the time?
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
I was like, I'm
Wow.
just pointing out, we're going to look stupid if you buy
Hmm.
this story.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was that kind of thing. So yes, it was tough. It's changing. We have powerful women now like Chandra Rhimes and
Hmm.
we
Yeah.
have a lot more clout and power, but that was not the case when I broke into
Yeah.
the industry,
Yeah. I'm
you know.
sorry to hear that. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible.
The next question is, were
Hmm.
there ever times when your story ideas or characters were dismissed or changed in ways that felt gendered?
Yes. Yes. I also, we have this thing, like if a script comes in from a freelancer and it's a mess and it has to be rewritten,
Yeah.
we do, God forgive me, this is a terrible thing, but this is the phrase they use. It's called a gangbang. And basically,
Mm,
okay, I'm taking teaser in act one, Melinda, you're writing act two, William, you're writing act
mm,
three, Caleb, you're writing act four, everybody
mm.
go with rewrite, we'll bring it together, and then Ira would try to smooth it all out. So
Wow.
because we were in a time crunch, and I often got stuck with the why don't you write the scene between Crusher and Wesley,
Mm,
the girl scenes.
hmm.
Mm.
And there was one episode, and I do not remember the episode. It was a long time ago,
Sure,
but
sure.
it was the basically the guy was like a trillionaire Elon Musk type
Sure.
who had the stable wormhole and blah blah blah.
Mm,
And
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and the whole point was that Troy, because we never got to see Troy do anything. I mean, all she ever did
yeah.
was go, I sense they're
Yeah.
angry. But yeah, no, they're shooting at us, I
Yeah.
mean, so I wanted her to be proactive. And so she knows
Mm,
this guy is a narcissistic psychopath. I mean, she knows,
Yeah.
mm,
and none of the men, they're all like, hey, he's cool, man, it's great.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I wanted her to manipulate using her skills and her
Mm,
training, manipulate him, poke him, and get that side of him to show itself. And
mm.
she does it on the bridge in front of everybody, and the guy blows up and he hits her.
Wow.
Well, the guys lost their minds. They were, you
Mm,
can't do that. We can't do that. And I was like, give her some,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
authority and some agency and power. And that didn't make it. And I really
mm,
wanted to write that. I wanted to show her using all of her training and her skills.
Yeah.
Say, I'm going to show you guys I'm going to rip the mask away and I'll
yeah.
do it step
Yeah.
by step
Yeah.
by step, and give her. I mean, that was why I wrote High Ground. I wanted Beverly to have something to do other than be mom and a
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
again, if you look at the roles, I mean, Trek did break ground, absolutely. I mean, having the mixed gender, mixed race
Hmm.
cast in the original series, first interracial kiss. I take nothing. I mean, Star Trek has always been woke, very
Right.
woke.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but if you break it down, Uhura was a telephone operator, and
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
Apple, and Dr. Crusher, and I mean, and Troy is the, come and tell me your feelings,
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
and the one time they tried to have a woman, in the role of Tasha Yar, they didn't know how to write what is a
No.
strong woman. She was just a
Yeah.
guy with
Hmm.
breasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that was disappointing. Women deal with conflict in a different way, and we never
Yeah.
saw that from her.
Yeah.
She was just written like a guy, and that was a shame because Denise is, a lovely person.
Hmm.
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
great, and yeah, I know she's good in so many other things. And then you watch her in Next Gen, and you're like, okay,
What
this
happened?
clearly
Yeah.
is not Denise.
Well, the thing too with her characters, there's like not even there's not a single episode where someone doesn't comment on like how attractive she is. And it's like you don't have to say that every episode. Like it's like as a character will come on the ship and like, oh, wow, she's really beautiful. It's like, yeah, but there's other women on the bridge too. I don't know. It's just weird
It was
sometimes.
weird. I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was that, objectifying male gaze.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Male gaze.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, and sometimes we were told, or they would tell cast, put some really hot girl with big boobs up front in the navigator seat. And
Yeah.
It's like, cool. Yeah.
but that is fortunately changing.
Yeah. Good.
Hmm.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Which it should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. It's a thing. Not to like really go back on the Tasha Yar thing, but just the point was there's a sequence where I think it's hiding Q. Riker gets Q powers, and he gives
Mm.
vision to Geordi, and Geordi has his visor off, and you can see LeVar Burton's eyes, and it's
Hmm.
great. And he's like looking at the view screen, and he sees space, and he's looking, and
Yeah.
then he circles back, and he's looking, and he sees Tasha, and he's like, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And we were just like, "What?" Like,
Just
you're
Yeah.
like, why do you always have to comment on like
Yeah.
sexualizing her? It's like he's looking at space.
Yeah.
no,
For the first time in his life. Yeah. No, I don't know.
That's okay. Anyways,
that I love LeVar because that is so hard to act when you can't
I
keep
bet.
eyes. You know,
yeah,
Yeah.
they're just they do so much for an actor.
Hmm.
Take that
yeah.
is a real hardship.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
It is a thing where you don't always think about like how fantastic of an actor he is because he is at such a disadvantage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
huge.
Hmm.
But he's also another lovely person.
Hmm.
yeah,
I have no complaints. It was just it was a weird time and a weird show. Let's
yeah,
put.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
certainly.
part of it was because Trek had this following, and I think everybody was just so nervous to treat it like a normal TV series, which
Hmm.
is why I think in some ways we were not permitted on the set.
Sure,
All these little, it's like we're professionals. We're not going to go fangirl or fanboy on these people.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to do our jobs, but it didn't work out. So,
yeah. One of
Yeah.
the last questions here she has is there a story or theme you always wanted to explore in Star Trek but never got the chance to?
that was my Data premeditates and commits murder. That was
Okay,
Hmm.
what I
yeah,
wanted
yeah,
Yeah.
to
That's cool.
I wanted to write. I was interested in, can he break the laws of robotics?
Mm.
Would he get around
Mm.
that? How would he justify it? How would he, you know? So
yeah.
that was the only one really. Yeah, I can't think of anything else I really desperately wanted to write, but
Sure, sure,
that's
yeah.
been a long time. So.
Well, we
Mm.
have taken up a lot of your time. Is there anything that you would like to talk about or promote or anything of that nature before we?
Obviously go check out my books,
Yeah,
guys.
Hmm. Hmm.
Amazon, iBooks, Kobo, Instagram. I'm Ingram.
yeah.
You can find my books. It keeps me writing. So, and I always finish my series. Both of my
Mm.
series are completed and up. Hopefully, there'll be
Right.
a new book as soon as I get this fantasy done. And yeah, I mean, and I guess the last thing I would say is the beauty of writing is that nobody has to give you permission
Mm,
to pass the
Hmm.
bar exam. If you want to tell a story, tell a story. You can
Mm.
sit down and write what you dream about or what you want to say, and nobody can stop you because that's your own. It's the most beautiful thing that you can just do this and acknowledge the things you want to talk about and the stories you want to tell. So
Hmm.
go
yeah,
write if you want to write, guys.
yeah, absolutely. My wife is an avid book reader. So what would what of your series would you recommend to start with?
Well, it depends. As if I have a space opera series, which is Imperials, um,
Okay, I'll
and
say that.
basically, I like stories that arc and you meet these characters when they're 18, and
Okay, yep.
um, and then in the final book in the series, which is 5-book series, they are in their 50s. And
Wow.
in this series is an
Mm,
occult thriller. And you follow this character from
Mm.
27 into his early 50s. It is a story about the war between science and rationality, superstition, religion, and magic. And I come down on the
Well.
science and rationality. Uh,
Mm.
and there is a big love story, and in the Imperial Saga, it's
Mm.
also about second-class citizenship and othering and
Oh.
fear of the other. Because
Mm.
perfect.
my premise for that was, what if humans are the evil invading aliens,
Hmm.
not the other
Ooh,
way around?
that's nice.
Oh, yeah,
Sounds like the mirror universe.
yes, a little bit, but we are definitely bad guys in these books, and then my
That's
characters
cool.
learn to be more accepting.
Hmm.
So Well, listen, thank you so much for the opportunity to visit with you.
Oh yeah.
It was
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. No,
Yeah, it was
seriously,
really awesome talking to you.
amazing. It was a
So,
really
and tell
great.
your wife hi.
I will. I will. I will.
I
Yeah.
liked your questions. It was great talking with you all. So thank
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and you've been
you.
like honestly like a nice like refreshing take on things because Caleb and I
Mhm.
have talked about a lot of stuff, and I'm really glad that we were able to talk to you about it. It was really
Yeah.
My
amazing.
pleasure. Thank you.
And
Thanks
she's
a lot.
and she's a and she's a Star Wars fan, so
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
always
Yeah.
I have a lightsaber over here in the corner. So
There you go. All right.
All
Bye
right,
now.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really funny when she started talking about Andor. I was like, "Oh man, that's good." Hmm.
Yeah, like how do you right Andor Rogue
It's
One? Like,
great.
how do you
Yeah.
not? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great show.
Well, that was our interview with Melinda Snodgrass. We cannot thank her enough for the interview. It was amazing. It was perfect. It was a breath of fresh air.
Hmm.
I can't appreciate more. I mean, that's the bread and butter of Star Trek are the writers. So
Hmm. So
she's
previously, I gave Measure of a Man 3 Akutas,
yeah,
and now I'm giving it 4 Akutas.
kudos.
Because honestly, dude, I think you and I had the same reaction when she was explaining, like, yeah, so I had like this buddy that was in the Navy, and he was like, oh, well, when you're on the ship, the captain and the first command are the captain is always pro, and the first command officer is always on the opposing side. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
mind
It totally
blown.
changed. Like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly why we talk to these people. So
Yep, that
absolutely
was super cool.
fantastic. We'll see who else we get on. We've been fortunate to find these people, so you never
Mhm.
know.
LeVar Burton next.
Yeah, LeVar Burton next. You know it. All right, guys. Until next time.